And the reason for that is because I kept on getting kicked out of the schools that were closer to my home. So I kept on having to go further and further. And somebody told me, a physicist told me once, that I was furthering my education that way. And he was right, because I had all this time to think in the bus. So I was in the bus and I was thinking about this problem, and I decided I was going to solve that problem before I got out of that bus. And I didn't realize that this problem had been discussed and worked on by many philosophers throughout the ages and so on, all the way down to the Pythagorean schools. I just wanted to solve it right there and then. And so I was thinking and I was thinking, and the bus was getting fuller and fuller, and I was getting hotter and hotter, and it was really, you know, becoming uncomfortable. So I closed my eyes, and in my mind's eye, I escaped the bus so that I would feel more comfortable. And I start to see that the bus would, as I rose above it, the bus would become a dot. And then I rose further and I saw the earth becoming a dot. And then I rose further and I saw the solar system becoming a dot. And I rose further again and I saw the galaxy becoming a dot. And then I start to fly back into the galaxy, into the solar system, back to the earth. And I located the bus I was in and back into that bus and back into my body. And I opened my eyes and I looked at my hand and I thought, oh, maybe I could fly into my hand. And then so I closed my eyes again and I thought of flying into my hand, and I saw that inside my hand would be dots that are called cells, and then inside those cells I would see millions and millions of other dots that are called atoms. I probably didn't even know what an atom was at the time. And I continued in and I saw, you know, the nuclei of an atom that was made out of smaller dots, and then again smaller dots, and so on. And I thought, and then I got it. I had this moment of illumination. And then in the bus, you know, going back from school, oh yes, the only solution to this riddle, the only way you can solve this, the only way you can, the only way you can visualize, understand dimension, is if you'd make the exact opposite axiom right from the beginning, which is that the only thing that exists is the dot. So here, within the dot is all dimensions. Within the dot, we have all the structure of space-time. Within the dot, all possible other dimension became in existence. That's the way I saw it. Meaning that if we continue to divide the dot, we could find smaller and smaller and smaller dots, and those would be like scales of dimensions. And that the only thing that exists is the dot. And it is only from your perspective that you define the scale at which you observe those dimensions. I mean, that was a completely different view, definitely. And I thought, well, if the dot, if zero dimension is all dimension in one, then that would mean that everybody that I'm looking at in this bus has all the dimensions, all the structure of space-time compactify in every dot. I mean, I wasn't thinking in terms of space-time, but I was thinking in terms of fractal dimensions. I didn't know fractals, but I had defined it in my head. And I got really excited. I was walking on a cloud. I got up in the bus and I didn't know what to do. I was like, oh my God, I think I got it. Everything is a dot. Every dot has infinity within it. Everything can be divided to infinity. And there's dots to infinity, infinitely big, infinitely small. We're living in a big dot that has little dots in it and little dots in it. And I was seeing dots everywhere. It was really exciting. And you know, when you have a revelation, you want to tell someone, right? So I didn't know who to talk to. I wasn't going to talk to the bus driver, you know. And so I ran home when I got out of the bus, and I was waiting for my mom to get back from work. And when my mom came in the door, I'm like, Mom, I figured out something at school today. It's really exciting. And, oh, my mom was so excited because she thought, oh, my God, you finally are doing good at school. Oh, my God. And then I started to tell her about this. And I'm telling my mom, you know, I think you have a dot inside of you that has all the dots and infinite dots inside and all this. And my mom is looking at me with a look of despair. The look of an Italian mother in despair. There's a force in that hasn't been calculated yet. And so she kind of could see it, but she knew it wasn't part of my curriculum at school, and she told me that. And she said, you know, if you answer that in your exam, it's probably not going to go well. And she said, anyway, right now, I just worked 8 hours, and I don't feel infinite. And when she said that, it rang a bell. I mean, she made a point. She made a very important point. I stopped and I had to think about it. It's like, well, if it's true that infinity is compactified in every point, how is it that we have finite boundaries? How is it that things are not just falling into each other to infinity? And how is it that things exist? How do we define those boundaries? How do we have a finite space in an infinite potential? How can that be together? I didn't know at the time, but actually I was tackling one of the fundamental difficulties in advanced physics. The difficulty of dealing with infinities and singularity, which is really the crux of unification at this time. It took me back. I had to think about that one. I was like, oh, I got to go back to the blackboard. I got to think about this before I talk to anybody else. But eventually, it came to me. And it took a very long time. I was much older by the time I realized. But all the way through my childhood, there was a few things that came through to help me deepen my belief that I had found something very crucial. Was I the first one that came to these conclusions? Have these ideas been around before? Absolutely. Okay? Other people have thought about this. Even our, Big Bang Theory says that everything came out of a point the size of a Planck's distance, which is extremely small, billions of times smaller than an atom. These ideas have been around. Have they been well understood? Maybe not. Certainly, I think some of the masters and some of the advanced beings that have walked the earth may have understood them.